Hi, I'm Malika Bilal in for Femi OK, and you're in the stream. Today, faith in times of fear. We'll speak to Muslim women about how recent events have impacted their daily lives. The Paris attacks and the recent San Bernardino shooting have revived an ongoing conversation about Muslim women's safety. The hijab, or headscarf, is often at the center of that discussion. Some in the community have advised their sisters to forego covering in order to protect themselves from harassment or potential violence in public, or to find other ways to cover without drawing attention. Others are promoting safety through self-defense tips and classes specifically for Muslim women. But there are a number of people who believe taking any of these routes is submitting to rising anti-Muslim sentiment. And online, the debate continues. One person says if you see a Muslim woman in a headscarf out in public, she's likely wearing it with a strong sense of bravery and conviction. Another, I refuse to hide in my house and live in fear. Someone else suggests, how about just stop wearing the hijab? But this person counters, I will not change how I wear my hijab or let anyone intimidate me. We'll explore this emotionally charged conversation in just a minute.
I'm Associate Professor Ann Ali. I'm the founding chair of People Against Violent Extremism, and I'm in the stream.
With me today with this conversation is digital producer and co-host Omar Madar, and you're already looking out for stuff I know that's been coming in for days now. What do you think?
With this topic, always lots of trolls is something that you have to put up with. But we also are getting a lot of experiences from Muslim women about the backlash they've had to put up with. We have people like Amina Aslan over here who says, I face basic daily discrimination, getting asked by strangers about ISIS, uncomfortable stares, and dumb comments while I'm walking by. And in Canada in particular, Muslim women over there launched a campaign, Je suis hijabi, to try to educate the public about the experience of Muslim women. We have a video comment from one of the creators of that campaign. Check it out.
With the recent terror attacks that happened in Paris, the aftershocks were felt all over the world. And specifically, there were hate crimes being perpetuated against Muslim women. We felt that as empowered Muslim women belonging to the Ahmadiyya Muslim Jamaat, it was essential for us to use our voice to help Canadians better understand the Muslim woman's identity. So through this campaign, we aim to open dialogue at public forums and to give Canadians the opportunity to hear firsthand from Muslim women what their faith and Muslim identity means to them.
Now, you don't have to be a Muslim woman. As long as you have thoughts on the backlash Muslim women are facing, we want to hear from you. The hashtag is AJStream.
With us on set, Dilshad Ali is managing editor of Patheos Muslim. That's a microsite on the Multi-Faith blog. Next to her, Donna Austin is a doctoral candidate at Rutgers University, where she researches the African-American Muslim community. In California, Hosai Mujaddadi is co-founder of Mental Health for Muslims. And in Abu Dhabi, Amina Khan is the founder of Amana Fitness. It's based in Toronto, Canada. Welcome to the stream, everyone. Now, I want to get this conversation started with something on my computer. It's this emotional piece, really, by one of our guests, Hosai. I'll read just a little bit of it. Hosai, you wrote, my advice to my fellow sisters in hijab, be smart, not reactionary, and overcome with fear. If you feel unsafe and anxious, given the latest tragedy, just pull out those hooded sweatshirts, beanies, hats, and wraps for a while until the dust settles. So, Hosai, what were you feeling or hearing from other people that made you decide to pen this piece?
Well, the day of the attack, before the suspects' identities were actually disclosed, I received a text message from someone very, very close to me. And she's been wearing hijab for 20 plus years, but she said that her husband told her that if the suspects were in fact Muslim, that he wanted her to remove her hijab. So I was, of course, already so emotionally just devastated by the attack itself. But then to receive such a text message, I immediately knew, just from experience before, after the Boston bombings, after Fort Hood, after 9/11, that I was potentially going to be receiving similar text messages. So I sat at my computer and I decided to write that post. And I feel that I did want to make one clarification, because I think perhaps it's just the way that it was worded, but I did go back to edit it, that the post was never intended to tell sisters to remove their hijabs and in lieu wear hooded sweatshirts, beanies, baseball caps. That's not what I was saying. It was actually to prevent what I was afraid of would be a wave of fear that would overcome our sisters and lead them to be reactionary and to actually want to take off their hijab, just as that text message that I received. So I was actually telling them to put those things on top of, and I actually brought samples because I feel I needed to clarify.
Show us
For
a
example,
sample.
like here's a hat with a little bill on it, and you put it on over your hijab in the car, or a beanie. This my mother-in-law made for me. But something like this is just practical if you're feeling unsafe. I never made it as a general, permanent fix that all Muslim women across the world should just, give in to these fears and stop wearing hijab. That was not what my post was about. It was about for those particular sisters who were really afraid, especially the day after, to go out to pick up their kids from school or go to work or pick up groceries, that this would just be a temporary, solution until the dust settles, to allay their fears and give them a sense of confidence.
Right. And as you were speaking, I saw Amina nodding her head there. Amina, of course, because I was talking about a text message that came after the San Bernardino shooting, but I know that you've had something happen to you. You were walking into your apartment building when you thought it was raining. Can you explain what happened?
Yes, I was walking to my apartment one day and there was a splat of water on the pavement next to me, and I looked up and it was not rain. It was actually someone from the top floor hurling a spitball down at me. So that was definitely a most unpleasant experience.
What did you do about it?
At first I was shocked, and I just went back into the apartment building. It was all the way on the top floor. We contacted the administration of the apartment building after, but in the moment you just carry on with your behavior.
Of course.
So we have people online also who have been through some experiences. We have TD over here who tweeted in saying, my sister-in-law took her hijab off because people yelled terrorist at her from passing cars. That happened in Houston, Texas. But we also have a video comment from Arnisa, who also described her experience and what moved her to change her behavior. Take a listen to what she has to say.
A lot of Muslim women, my friends, have come up to me to ask me on how they should proceed with their hijab, because I used to wear the hijab, and because of safety reasons I decided to take it off. So right now Muslim women feel that they must choose between their safety and their faith, and that's truly terrible.
Donna, can you imagine having some sort of experience that would actually compel you to take off your hijab?
Certainly I can certainly see how one feeling threatened, and in a particular set of circumstances where they're feeling very threatened, and the threat is very immediate and imminent, where one might take whatever steps they consider necessary to ensure their safety. As a Muslim, Islamic law allows for that, right? We're not required to put our lives in jeopardy in order to practice our faith if the circumstances warrant it. I will say, however, I know me personally, it's difficult for me to kind of contemplate going that route, because in addition to being a Muslim, I'm also an African American, and so the question of safety and having safety, if I happen to take off my hijab, is not something that's guaranteed to me as an African American woman. Particularly, right now, we've been in the midst, as a country, as a nation, we've been in the midst of basically a year full of ongoing protests against police brutality. Many of those victims are women. At the current moment, Daniel Holtzclaw is an officer in Oklahoma who's accused of raping 13 black women. And so for me, I could take my hijab off, and I could feel safe. And this is, in no way in judgment of other women who have made decisions to do other than I have done. But at the same time, I don't know that I'd be safe, right? Regardless. So for me, I feel like it's important to continue to live my life in a way that isn't, where I'm not giving into fear, where I'm not giving into the pressure, because if we do that, and if the people who have preceded me, my ancestors, had done that, I wouldn't be standing here today.
And it's interesting you said that, because when I get dirty looks on the train or the bus, I don't know if it's because of my scarf, it's because they don't like that I'm black, is it because I'm a woman, or is it just because I have something on my face they don't really agree with. So
all of those things at the same time.
All of those things at the same time. But Dilshad, I want to bring you into this conversation as well. Do you have any fear, trepidation at all about practicing your faith, whether that's praying in public, whether that's wearing your scarf?
No, I don't either. I think just to mostly I agree with Donna. I mean, I think all of this thing is related, and we were talking about this before we came on here, and I've been wearing the hijab for a decade about now, and so I was good in my 20s when I started wearing it, and it's very intrinsic to who I am. I get up in the morning, I have the kids call it a go-to. I have a go-to scarf, I wrap on, I take the kids to school. I come home, I take it off, I get to work. You know, it's part of who I am, and it doesn't change for me. And you know, right after San Bernardino, I had friends text me as well and advise me, you know, and non-Muslim friends saying, you know, we're afraid for you. You know, could you consider maybe not, or changing your style, or perhaps, and I think if that will help you feel safer and stronger to change the style of how you wear it or something like that, then that's fine. Far be it from me to tell someone how to feel. If you feel afraid, you feel afraid. You know, you can't stop that. So if you need to address that by changing your style or how you go about your day, then please, by all means. Personally, not for me. You know, I've been at this a long time. Like Donna, I have kids, you know, and they're in middle school and in high school and elementary school, and I got a lot more things to worry about than that. It's just intrinsic to me, so I just keep going.
I like that you said feeling how you feel, because I think some of the conversation that we're seeing online, some of it maybe even in reaction to your piece, Huzai, seemed like it was policing fear or telling people that you shouldn't be fearful of this because I'm not fearful of this. Can you talk about some of that?
Yes, I mean, part of my experience the night after I wrote the post was just going through the hundreds and hundreds of comments. There was a lot of great supportive comments, but then there were some trolls on there, as well as people who exactly were shaming people. And I think for me, that was extremely painful to witness, because these are the times where our community should really be looking out for each other, you know, to support each other, not to use an opportunity like this to suddenly start, again, shaming, being self-righteous. And that's why for me, I immediately thought, if we reframed this conversation to something, for example, like fashion, we would never, you know, nobody would be up in arms about it. But when someone's expressing legitimate fear, suddenly we feel that we can shame them and make them feel that they're spiritually weak. I don't understand why that's okay. That's not okay. Because again, I mean, we're talking about female empowerment. That was also a common theme that was brought up. We need to empower our sisters. Well, for me, if you want to empower sisters, you give them choices, and then you give them the right to exercise those choices. You do not, you know, diminish or you know, limit their choices and then shame them for them. And that's exactly, unfortunately, the response that I saw repeatedly. So it was very painful for me to see that.
I mean, I think it's important for me to think about all of this within the context of hijab in general, in the best of times, if you will, right? As a very intensely personal choice, right? Whether or not a woman wears hijab, ties it this way, doesn't, whatever, it's really none of anybody's business except for hers. And so I think that
Look
it's
at all the nods around the children.
I mean, it's important. It's important
I was
to
nodding internally.
It's important to. I think it's important to kind of put that out there. And so certainly in times of fear, I cannot, you know, presume to make a decision for another woman about what's best for her and her circumstances. I mean, for me, I'm actually more interested in kind of interrogating and attacking a society and a situation in which women's bodies generally are overly policed and subject to violence based on whatever choices they happen to make. I mean, a week before the San Bernardino shooting, there was a shooting at a Planned Parenthood clinic in Colorado Springs, and that's all about control over women's bodies, right? And so I think what we're dealing with here, when we have these controversies, when you have people who are you know, it's a very emotionally charged topic on all sides, but at the same time, I think it's important to think about the ways that women's bodies are monitored and critiqued, and in ways that are unfair and in ways that are not empowering.
So one of the things that Dilshad mentioned earlier is getting calls from people who care about your safety saying, would you consider changing? We're seeing that reflective also in our online community. We have Sarah over here who says, my devout parents forbade me from wearing the headscarf in fear of persecution. Goes on to say, my family was worried and discouraged me about writing about Islam because they thought it would hurt my career and my safety. Amina, have you had any similar experiences, and what would you say to people like Sarah who have that family pressure to try to basically move away from being publicly Muslim in a sense?
Right, and I think that Hosai and Donna really hit the nail on the head that it's important to remember that the Muslim community is extremely diverse, and so naturally that diversity is going to be reflected in the responses towards these hate crimes. And there are 1.6 billion people who identify as Muslims. And so naturally, there's going to be women who respond in all different ways. So there's going to be some women who choose to remove public symbols of religious identification. There's going to be some women who choose to put a beanie on their hijab, as Hosai demonstrated. And there's also going to be women who become more bold in terms of being public with their religious identity. And I think it's really important to keep in mind that now is not the time, it's not appropriate now to be attacking or criticizing Muslim women for their particular choices or for being somehow un-Islamic or immoral. Now is the time to come together, to be supportive of each other, and to really focus on how we as a community can move forward and portray positive images and messages about Islam. And it was in that spirit that I wrote the article on self-defense tips for Muslim women. I mean, right now, self-defense and protecting our family, protecting our communities is a big concern. And so now is the time to focus on that supportive environment.
And so, of course, you mentioned that. I already had it ready, and I'm scrolling through it on my screen here. I loved it mostly because of the animations, but also just really helpful tips. Here's one. Be aware of your surroundings. Don't be on your phone and not really look at where you're going. Be hyper vigilant for how you look and dress as a target. Some other tips that we've seen, Dilshad, carry mace, carry maybe your keys in your hand. Do you do things differently? Are you warning your kids to do things differently?
I mean, I think I'm not carrying mace or anything, but I think a lot of these tips I find are really common knowledge stuff. I read the article that Amina wrote, and then there was a piece on muslimgirl.net recently giving a bunch of tips about how to be safe. I read a post from Asifa Qureshi Landis this morning about ways you can engage and be safe and different things you can do. And they're very common knowledge stuff, and I think it's things that we just need to be reminded of, I mean, before all this happened, my mom always told me, don't be looking at your phone when you're walking to the car. Just look in your back seat before you sit down, Dilshad, These are just things that we need to be reminded of and be aware of. And it's interesting what you said a little bit earlier, Omar, because when I went into this as an editor, my dad was one of the first ones who was like, honey, I don't know if you should be writing about Muslims in America. I don't know if you should be doing this. You should really think about it. And it's just, it's just what you decide to do, and you just keep moving forward. And like we were talking about, you just live your life. And this is what makes sense to me. And so I just keep going forward.
We also have people who got a video comment. I'm actually going to go to you with this. We have a video comment from Mariana and Amir who are talking about self-defense. They've taken it to a step beyond just tips. Take a listen to what they have to say.
So because of the growing anti-Muslim rhetoric right now within the United States, we thought it was really important for us to empower the women in our community by facilitating a defense class.
And exercising our rights, protecting our freedom and our dignity.
Hosai, I know you wanted to jump in anyway, but if you can add to whatever you wanted to say also, whether you think this might be, is it alarmist, the critics might say, that this is, worrying a little too much, or whether you think it is an appropriate response to the current climate?
I mean, people are dying. I don't know what more we need to see. When we see people being killed, just indiscriminately, that to me is enough reason to, yes, be hypervigilant, be a little bit more self-aware, take whatever precautions you need to. And, so I don't think it's being alarmist at all. I mean, like I said, lives have been lost. But I did want to comment about your previous question, Omar, regarding family. Immediately when my post went viral, which I absolutely had no expectation that would happen, I really didn't. I thought sometimes, you sit on Facebook and you just think you're talking to the handful of friends or family that visit your page. But when it just started to explode and get everywhere, my brother had told my mom, and she immediately called me and was really upset with me and actually wanted me not to even come on the show today. But this is where we, of course, as women have to exercise our own choices, reassure our family members that we have the confidence to do whatever our heart tells us to do. And I told her, I traveled this weekend, I went to visit her. I had some events in the Bay Area where she lives, and when I came to the house, she was surprised to see me as I am right now in full hijab, because she thought, based on my post, that I would be wearing a hat or a hoodie. And I told her, Mom, you know that, that was, for the general public or people who were reading it. But for me personally, I, coming from Southern California to Northern California, I feel safe because I'm very blessed to be in two different communities that I feel are inclusive. And yes, we have our share of problems, but overall I felt safe. And so I reassured her that if I were to ever travel maybe to some remote or, rural area somewhere where there really aren't very many Muslims, then yeah, I would possibly take my own advice, because again, this is self-preservation. We have to be thinking wisely, and not necessarily emotionally. And wisdom for me is falling back exactly on what Donna mentioned, which is what our religion tells us. Our religion is a religion that honors the preservation of life, that the entire structure of the religion is based on preserving our life and really, preventative measures. So we have to exercise those choices that are given to us.
And Jose, I'm wondering, as you talked about the post and the reason that you put it up there because you felt like a response needed to go out. I'm wondering what all of our guests think about the response from Muslim leaders, what the role of male allies or Muslim brothers might be in this conversation and in this protection that we're seeking. Anyone can really tackle that one, but go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I was so moved. Well, I had mentioned to the producers that was also part of the reason why I wrote that post. I did wait for a little bit before I jumped into the conversation because there was no conversation being had. People were reacting to the shooters, people were reacting. But for me, again, I was thinking next day, what are we going to face? We're going to face, especially Muslim women, because we are so visibly Muslim, we're going to face the immediate backlash, potentially. So I was thinking, let's be proactive, let's do this. And I was saddened because I didn't see some of our leaders really talk about what to do next, how to move forward from this. So I said, okay, some of our sisters I know from previous experience are definitely paralyzed with fear. There were people on my post who were actually talking about calling up their mental health providers because of their anxiety levels were rising. So these are legitimate, real things that we have to accept. And and again, it's objective. If we're feeling strong and don't have those issues, that's fine. But what about the millions of people or thousands or whatever that do? What about them? Do we just leave them alone and let them deal with these issues on their own and further?
And Jose, as you were saying that, I see all of our guests nodding their head. Donna, Dilshad, and Alman are nodding their heads in agreement with what you're saying, but I do want to get to our community because I know that they're also
That's right. And honestly, the same sentiment is really there. We have 21 years of Dilanario says, I could describe it as draining emotionally, physically, mentally, constantly being on edge, and it does take a toll. Donna, are there any things that you tell yourself? Are there any exercises that you just, to basically try to calm yourself down when you're looking at how awful the response can sometimes be? What advice would you give to people like that?
I mean, I'm a big advocate of self-care. And so for me, personally, that can range from anything from stepping back from social media and news consumption, because many times that can kind of, it's oversaturation and can sometimes even warp one's perception of what your actual life is likely to be like. So in other words, if I'm just consuming constant stories of anti-Muslim backlash and violent incidents 24 hours a day on my phone, even on my phone, not just at home anymore, right? But now we take it with us and put it in our pockets and look at it all day, right? That can become overwhelming. So sometimes I need to step back from it and walk around the neighborhood that I actually live in and kind of determine, okay, wait a minute, maybe it's not exactly the way it is on CNN or whatever we're talking about. So there's that. Enjoying the company of family and friends, exercising, having chocolate is one of my favorite ways to take care of myself. These are just things that we need to do on a regular, right? To make sure that we're taking care of ourselves, because it definitely is. And women, I think, if you'll forgive me for taking a couple extra seconds, especially visibly identifiable Muslim women, right? Because one of the easiest things for people who are prone to bigoted and violent behavior, they have to identify a target, and visually, right? If you look a certain way, that's one of the easiest ways that people can be identified. And so for that reason, when we have discussions of Islamophobia and the impact of Islamophobia, in public spaces, in the media.
Finish in about 5 seconds.
Right, the disproportionate impact on women is often not,
You are hearing from Donna Austin. You also heard from Dilshad Ali, Amina Khan, and Jose Mujaddidi. We're taking you to the post-show stream.aljazeera.com. Welcome back. This is the Stream's online post show. We're discussing Muslim women's experiences after recent events around the world. Let's get right back to that conversation with something on my laptop. I want to share this tweet from Azida Rahman. This was tweeted in November. She says, my niece's first response to the Paris attacks, should I tell people at school I'm not Muslim anymore? And she goes on to say she's 7 years old. And so while we kind of ponder that and what this is doing to our children, I actually wanted to share a response to that tweet. This is right after the chain. This is Logical Fruit, that's the handle. And this person writes in, stop acting like a victim. It's sickening. People were murdered today and you feel sorry for yourself. Do you have shame? So Dilshad, I wanted to pose that to you because it points to this delicate balance between, of course, feeling empathy and sadness for fellow citizens, fellow humans who are killed brutally, but then also knowing that you might have to watch your own back. How do you walk that line?
You know, where I work, it's a multi-faith site, so we have, we'll have a Muslim channel, an evangelical Christian channel, a Jewish channel, an atheist channel, and we all have to dialogue and work together. So I always feel like I'm walking that balance between when something unfortunately and terrible like this happens, to acknowledge the tragedy and to acknowledge the awfulness of what it was and offer your apologies and react the way you would react, at the same token realizing what's going to come next. So these conversations that you're bringing up on Twitter are the exact same things that are happening in my home. I have a 12-year-old daughter in middle school, and after Paris she came to me, and this is the first time in 12 years of being her mom that she said, Mom, are you going to take your scarf off? Are you afraid? I'm like, hun, why would you ask me that? I've never been afraid of that, nor have I ever projected that to you, And these are, I was telling a friend of mine, these are tough conversations that I've been having with her for about 1.5 years that I didn't have to address before. And 7 is young, but these are, they're all legitimate conversations, and it's hard for us to comprehend that feeling bad and feeling really awful, and just the sorrow you feel over the tragedy and the anger and everything you feel is legitimate. Feeling nervous and afraid and having to explain those things to your children, that's legitimate too. It's all part of our parenting. It's all part of it.
So one of the questions
Just
that comes up a lot. Go ahead, do you want to add something? Jump in.
I just wanted to add on to that we can't minimize or shame feelings of fear or pain. I mean, this is a very difficult time for Muslim women to be living in. Muslim women are justifiably afraid to leave their homes. In Toronto, a very multicultural society, we have a Muslim woman who was attacked, beaten, and robbed on the way from picking up her children from an elementary school of all places. And so we can't shame that or make Muslim women feel that they're being cowardly by taking steps to protect themselves. Rather, that's where that supportive environment needs to thrive so that our Muslim community can feel safe.
One thing that I just, I feel like people need to remember and reflect on is that the prophets themselves displayed fear. I mean, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala addressed Musa alayhi salam in Surah Taha. He says, La takhaf, don't be afraid. So fear is a human emotion.
You threw out a couple of Arabic terms that are commonplace to most Muslims, but can you explain?
Sure. God says to Musa, he says, don't be afraid, because he was, apprehensive about facing the Pharaoh. So he's telling him, don't be afraid. Again, acknowledging, validating that fear is a real human emotion, and it's actually a healthy response to danger. And so we shouldn't, again, I echo everything that was said about shaming people. And as far as, our young Muslims are concerned, I also had a friend who told me that she told her son, who is in high school, not to have any more political conversations. He's very outspoken about Islam. He's very proud Muslim. But as soon as this incident happened, she'd had enough. She said, I'm not going to risk his life by, in any way encouraging him, even though he's passionate about these topics, to make his voice vocal with his friends, just in the, God forbid that someone takes something that he says out of context or uses it to harm him. So she actually ended up having that very serious conversation with her 16-year-old son. So I think, again, this is something that every single parent, you're going to be responsible. You are responsible for your children, for your safety. So you have to have that conversation with your spouse and make that decision for yourself. But it's not anybody's, place to judge you for that, whatever you decide to do. I don't recommend that anybody, take any drastic measures in terms of, stopping or encouraging their children to stop identifying as Muslim, but I think just being, again, having healthy conversations, allowing the children to express their fears without making them feel bad is one way to at least get the conversation started.
One of the things that a lot of people are talking about is the role of non-Muslims in all of this. So we have Katie over here who says non-Muslims need to use their platforms to voice support for our Muslim neighbors as frequent and as loud as possible. And we have Orainab over here who says community leaders are engaged and family is on alert. Muslims are stronger and more united now thanks to collaboration with non-Muslims as well. Amina, what is your sense of what the community around you has been reacting like? I mean, is there anything that you would like them to do that they have not been doing?
I mean, I think it's very natural for the society and community to feel afraid because there's, of course, a fear of an unknown. When an individual is just exposed to headlines and media titles that portray Muslims as a completely foreign entity, of course, there's going to be that fear. But I think we need to shift the discussion to a more productive discussion on how the Muslim community can work together with other communities to actually represent Islam in terms of a positive portrayal and how we can actually project that positive portrayal that belongs to us in society.
You know, I actually want to show one example that I saw just right heading into the show. Right before the show, I saw this. This was a post of a friend of mine. She didn't make it public, so I'm not going to show her face, but she reposts someone else's post, and her writing says, Muslim friends, whatever you need, just tell me, a phone call, a letter, a donation, a ride, a coffee, my time, etc. You got it. And so the post that she reposts is public, and it's from someone named Sophia Ali Khan.
I was just going to bring that up.
I figured that you were, Dilshad, and so I just want to read one line from it. She writes, if you have a Muslim work colleague, check in. Tell them that the news is horrifying and you want them to know you're there for them. She has lots of other tips for what allies can do to make people feel comfortable. What are your thoughts on that?
You know, it's interesting that she posted that last night at 10:30 at night, and her brother and I are connected on Facebook, which is how I saw it. And again, very, very common suggestions she made. You know, we were talking about this earlier too. You know, if you're going on a plane, come sit next to a Muslim. Automatically the threat level goes down. You know, people don't feel so scared anymore. You know, reaching out, calling, texting, let's go hang out, let's have coffee. Let's keep things normal, right? I have a girlfriend, she just, you know, let's go out for coffee. We always do that every few weeks or so, and that doesn't change. And that makes me feel better to know that nothing changes, you know, that we just keep going forward and we keep doing what we're doing.
Can I add something to that? I think that it works both ways. I think we are just as responsible as Muslims to also, you know, reach out and to build those bridges with our non-Muslim friends, and not to just expect them to, of course, if they want to show empathy, but I also feel we have to do that. For example, I was on a plane on Saturday and I noticed a couple and they sat next to me. I had the very front seat. And so they sat next to me, but I could tell that they, you know, looked at me a little just with concern, I'll say. And so I decided, okay, how am I going to let them know that I'm okay? Like, don't worry about it. So I took out my phone. The people were still coming onto the plane. And I basically showed them a video that I felt would be a great conversation starter. And sure enough, we laughed. We were, you know, just commenting on the video, and they were immediately at ease. Then we continued the conversation through the flight. So I feel like we as Muslims also have to just realize it's not everybody's fault. The media has done a wonderful job of making us look to be, you know, collectively blaming us for the problems that a few have done. And so if we counter that with real human experiences, we're able, and I think we're going to be more effective that way than just waiting for people to do that with us.
Because I love what you're saying. I love that example, but I am not an extrovert, and so I bristle even at the fact that I have to do that. I like to go into a plane with my earphones on and not pay attention to anyone else, and I kind of give an attitude to everyone who looks at me out of line. And I understand why that's probably not a good thing, but can you understand where that comes from?
Yeah, I mean, I was actually going to talk to that. I mean, and I think it's a great suggestion on one level, and it's what we should be doing as human beings. I mean, when I'm in the store, you know, if I see a baby, I smile at. I mean, this is part of my normal routine that I would do, but I think also in addition to being somewhat of an introvert myself, but also feeling, you know, on some level, I don't feel like I should be responsible, right, for alleviating people's bigotry, and that in its own right is exhausting work, right? If I'm in, you know, I travel and work in spaces where many times I'm the only minority, I'm the only black person, I'm the only woman, and having to constantly educate people to try and prove to them that you're a human being is not fair on some level, and it's exhausting, and so you know, I think a part of the burden, a large part of the burden is on people who may not be familiar, who claim to have goodwill, right, and are against prejudice and are against bigotry and are against violence, right, to do the work to come out of their own shells and to speak up, because it's not enough. You know, I mean, I don't know. I can't help but draw upon my experience, right, as an African American and the long history that we've had in this country of trying to kind of become accepted, right? You know, African Americans have served in every war since the Revolution, right? And, you know, and done all of these things to kind of prove like who we are, right? We've contributed everything to literature, music, whatever, and are generally great human beings, right? But still, we have to fight for the right to not get shot in the streets in 2015, right? So, I mean, I understand what Hosai is saying, and I don't completely disagree with that, right? Because we should be human to people that we come into contact with, without question. This is what we always do, right? But at the same time, I want my neighbors to do some work.
Right, and I see where you're both coming from, but I'm gonna have to pause the conversation now. I know there's so much more to say. We're gonna have to finish this conversation online with #AJStream, because that's all the time we have for now. I do want to give the very last word, though, to our community who's been tweeting in nonstop on this. Thank you for that.
I'll leave you with this interesting thought. When we put out the question of what do Muslim women do to prepare for their security, to protect themselves, Jackie tweeted in saying, just as a woman, not a Muslim one, my heart hurts knowing this question needs to be asked. On behalf of stupid people, I am sorry. Now, of course, Jackie probably has to apologize for stupid people as much as an average Muslim has to apologize for ISIL, which is not at all, but an interesting sentiment nonetheless.
I appreciate that one, Jackie. Thanks to everyone who's watching. We'll see you online.